The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
What if your reward or loyalty points card could help detect a serious illness before you even knew something was wrong? Tonight, the pros and cons of signing up for that kind of data tracking. First up, why don't teenagers race out on their 16th birthday to get their driver's license as we all once did? It's complicated, as we'll hear. It's Tuesday, March the 7th, and that's coming up on The Agenda. For generations, beginning probably in the post-World War II era, turning 16 meant one thing above everything else: getting your driver's license. And while that's still true for many teens, it's apparently not the rite of passage it once was. And there may be consequences for us all because of it. Let's explore why this is happening with, in Nanaimo, British Columbia, Kylie Bowman, who leads the Youth Advisor Program at the Traffic Injury and Research Foundation. And here in our studio, Constable Sean Shapiro from the Toronto Police Service, who focuses on traffic safety education, and Teresa Di Felice, Assistant Vice President, Government and Community Relations at CAA, the Canadian Automobile Association for South Central Ontario. And it's great to have you two back in our studio. And Kylie, nice to have you on our program from the left coast for the first time, I think. Let's just go through some stats here to set this up. Driving a rite of passage no more, we are calling this. It's these numbers from The Economist. Here we go. American 16-year-olds with a driver's license. If we go back to 1997, almost half of American 16-year-olds had a driver's license. In the year 2020, just a quarter. Let's do another set of numbers here. Americans 20 to 24 without a driver's license. In 1983, a little over 8%, only 8%, of Americans 20 to 24 did not have a driver's license. Last year, 20%, a lot more. Also from the same Economist article, in the United States, the proportion of people with licenses has fallen for every age group under 40 and is still falling, and even those who do have driver's licenses are driving less. Okay, let's start here. Kylie, when you got your driver's license, how old were you?
I was 19.
You were 19. You waited 3 years. How come?
I started with a few lessons from a private teacher, and I felt that I hadn't quite learned enough to confidently drive out on the road, so I did another round of lessons.
Gotcha. Teresa, how old were you?
I was 16. I got my license on my 16th birthday.
On the day?
Yeah, absolutely.
As one did back then?
Yeah, of course.
Not that it was so long ago, but that's what I did too. Sean, how about you?
16th birthday, I was there getting my 365, and I had my full G shortly thereafter.
365, that's what we used to call it back in the day. What did that mean anyway?
It was valid for a year. It was the equivalent of a G1, and it allowed you to drive with a supervising driver.
Got it. Okay, pick up the story. Why does there seem to be this delay, this situation where no longer, 16-year-olds are out there on their birthday grabbing their driver's license as soon as they possibly can?
I have to speculate. My wife doesn't drive. She doesn't have her license. I tried to get her to take her the program, but it didn't work out. She never needed it. She lived on a transit line. Everything was so accessible, and across the street from where she lived was the grocery store. It just wasn't a need. And why spend the money on something that you're not going to use?
Teresa, what do you think's going on?
I think there's a number of things, right? Social media or mobile phones have replaced the need to see each other in person. My 15-year-old son can play games and connect with his friends all through a microphone and headset and not have to be in the same room to socialize, I think is one aspect. Cost is another. It's expensive, and parents are driving their kids longer.
Kylie, you told us about your own personal circumstances, but look society-wide now. What would you add to the list of reasons why kids are not out there getting their driver's license as soon as they turn 16?
Well, at least in BC, we have to go through an L learner's permit, and then an N, and then a full license. So a full license I got when I was 19, and getting your L you can get when you're 16 in BC. These tests cost money, and a lot of young people in this generation are struggling with money, and everything is just costing so much. They simply cannot afford to get a vehicle or afford the insurance or even afford to take the test to get your license.
Let me follow up with, okay, admittedly a bit of a tricky question here. You were in an accident once upon a time, yes?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes, I was in an accident in 2011. I was 8 years old at the time, and I still struggle from the aftermath of that crash. I have chronic neck and back pain that will stick with me for the rest of my life. And along with that came a concussion at the time, whiplash, and I now deal with PTSD. So,
My goodness,
a little rough.
I'm so sorry to hear that, but would you say that's part of the explanation why you were not so gung-ho to get out there and get your license right away?
Yeah, it was scary, I guess, because when you're that young, you feel completely safe around adults. The adult is driving, they know what they're doing, you have your complete trust in them, and to have that broken is hard to get over, and especially when it's now your turn to be the adult that needs to have control over the situation, and you are now responsible for the other people in the vehicle. It's a lot of responsibility, and it's a little scary. Understood.
Totally understand. Sean, I think it's fair to say that most teenagers, most 16-year-olds who are out there in the car for the first time, well, some of them get a bad rap for reckless driving and careless driving and irresponsible driving, unlike the way Kylie just described it. Do the facts, in fact, bear that out?
There's no age restriction on poor driving behavior, and we have adults of all ages and young persons committing similar offenses. Stunt driving isn't exclusive to younger folks. We see it across the board. So, you know, if you wait till you're older, do you prevent the behavior? Not necessarily. What we see is responsible people do responsible things.
I can say this because I was a 16-year-old young man once upon a time. I'm not sure there's anything dumber in this world than a 16-year-old young man. And, you know, the notion of them being behind the wheel doesn't fill me with security and calm. Is that fair to say?
Not all of them are bad. And I think it's the few that make a bad name for the rest. They get painted with a big brush, as do all of us. When we see young persons doing things, it can have catastrophic consequences. But again, the same thing for adults. And if you put off that poor behavior, it may just come up later on. There's no specific fix.
I don't, you know, I'm being a little facetious here, but I mean, the notion that when you're a 16-year-old young man, you feel completely invulnerable and that nothing bad can happen to you, that's what I'm referring to there.
100%. And at the same time, that feeling of invulnerability maybe allows you to get out and learn, whereas some people have developed some anxiety around driving, and that's also a problem.
Why do you believe, Teresa, that, if in fact you do, that it is actually important for younger people to get their driver's licenses at an earlier age as opposed to waiting until they're 20, 25, 30 before getting that done?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest reason why I think people should sort of look into this and get the experience of driving is it takes a long time to develop those experiences. It doesn't have to be all highway driving. It could be driving to the grocery store, you know, with mom and dad or you know, whoever you live with. First of all, it takes, you know, 5 years to really come across the various scenarios. And there are jobs that are, you know, definitely requiring a driver's license as part of the requirement. And so, you know, the work world is seeing a gap in people getting into the workforce with a valid driver's license, with enough experience to be insured properly. And young people are shutting themselves out of the opportunity. But it's the experience. The younger you start and you just take those opportunities with a caregiver, with a parent, with someone you trust to help you through those scenarios, you need that time in a car to really gain the experience.
Kaylee, I should ask you, do you feel like you missed out on something, given that you did not get your license until you were 19? And if I'm reading between the lines here, you don't sound like you're all that thrilled or enamored to be in a car most of the time anyway. Do you feel you've missed some necessary experience to get that comfort level?
I think I've almost gained more experience now. I'm far more careful while driving, and then it's also learning to keep that balance between careful and confident. And it's just it's a lot of work and effort that you have to go through to build your way up to being that confident driver, that confident and safe driver. So at this point, I think it was worth the wait to get my full license, because now I feel completely confident behind the wheel.
If you don't mind, I want to ask you another follow-up from the time you were in an accident. You were 8 years old, so obviously you weren't driving. Who was driving?
It was my cousin's mother, so my parents weren't around in the crash.
And was she at fault in the accident?
No, we were rear-ended on the highway.
Okay, and I imagine, I mean, she obviously felt horrible about the fact that it happened, even though she was not at fault.
Yes.
How'd you all handle that situation when it happened?
I was also in the car with my cousin. She was mostly screaming during the whole time. Lots of panicking, lots of screaming. But it was better when my parents came to pick me up at the end. Of course, my cousin's mom felt bad about the situation and kept checking in on me. But it wasn't her fault. There's nothing she could have done to avoid the crash.
Right. Now, Sean, I know, I think we've talked about this before on this program. You don't like the word accident, do you? And you heard Kylie describe it as an accident.
And out there they call them crashes as opposed to accidents usually, but we call them collisions because someone is inevitably responsible for what happened. It wasn't just by oopsie-doo. Somebody did something wrong, something they could have done differently to prevent that collision.
Do you believe, and again, you can, we all have anecdotal information. You tell us what the evidence says. Distracted driving, using the cell phone while driving, texting while driving. Is that something that I know anybody can be stupid at any age behind the wheel, but is that something younger people do more of?
You know what? It's a new layer, and I can tell you that I've charged primarily older people with the offense of distracted driving, specifically using their handheld device. Young folks, I wouldn't say overrepresent. But it is a new layer compared to when I started driving, when cell phones weren't a thing. You know, that's a real change that is plaguing driving today and road safety in general. We see more collisions as a result of distraction, whether it be, you know, just being out to lunch and distracted in your own thoughts, or actually using your phone. They pose the same risk.
I'm trying to remember what they told us back in the day. Was it something like don't change the radio while you're driving, or like don't be hunting for radio stations?
Something along those lines.
It was simple.
If you're doing anything other than being focused on the road, you're not doing your job.
Teresa, would fewer younger drivers on the road mean lower insurance premiums for everybody else who is on the road?
Well, no, because I think we see that, again, you know, if younger people aren't on the road right now and we've got the majority of people being older and driving, there's still crashes or collisions happening. What goes into pricing insurance is a whole bunch of stuff.
Because we know 16-year-olds pay the highest premiums. I mean, for the most part, right?
I mean, there are higher risks, but that's associated with also tenure of driving, right?
They have no record.
They have no record. So again, whether you're getting your license in a car for the first time at 30, if you don't have a record of ever having that, you're going to pay high premiums. There's greater risk, and this is why I say, like, get that practice in, because that practice will help those types of situations and encounter and being able to avoid crashes and collisions because you're more experienced in the skill itself.
Sean, you got kids?
I do.
What do you got?
I've got two young ladies at home, neither of whom are anywhere near the age of driving. We just graduated out of you know, a booster seat for one, and the deal with them is they're learning when they're in the car watching me drive. They're picking up on my good and bad habits. So I think that's something that most drivers don't realize. The training starts well before they get behind the wheel.
Surely the guy in charge of traffic safety education for the Toronto Police Service has no bad driving habits.
I certainly would think that way, but according to my daughter, my youngest, who is always saying, "Daddy, you're speeding," because she'll look at my the GPS on the screen, and if it flashes red for a moment, she's on me. So she keeps me honest.
But they are years away from getting their driver's licenses. Have you thought about how you're going to handle? I mean, you know, it's difficult that you're in the business, and I assume you're not going to be a nervous front seat driver telling you what to do all the time.
I'm going to send them to a professional teacher. And that's really important because I don't want to add the TikTok traffic cop element of pressure to their learning process. But they are going to go to a learning institute or a teacher because they're going to find out how to drive from someone who's being taught to teach it professionally and without the stress of dad looming over their shoulder.
I get that there's the stress of dad looming over their shoulder, but you know your stuff, actually. And you probably know it better than the person who's going to teach them. Any concerns about that?
Well, I know the law. But in terms of how to teach a kid how to drive, that's something that I can't take credit for. I gave it a shot with my wife, didn't work so well. We went to a professional for her, and really, I think that's the best way to go. I'll still be around online, hopefully, to help people along with understanding what the rules and penalties and consequences and so on are for what they do wrong, and what the best practices are. But the actual nuts and bolts of driving, we'll leave it to the pros.
Okay. Kylie, we should talk about the difference between urban and rural here. And I wonder how much is being in the big city a factor in the fact that 16-year-olds aren't rushing out to get their licenses anymore?
There's so much going on, especially when you're learning how to drive. Nothing is second nature yet. Every action, every minute detail, glancing at the rear view mirror, figuring out which way to flip the indicator, it's a step-by-step process that these new drivers have to figure out. And then also adding in the bustling city and someone not paying attention and just stepping into the road. So not only do we have to pay attention and think about every action within the vehicle, we have to think about the action of the other drivers, people on the streets, and it's exhausting. It's a lot, and a lot of people aren't willing to deal with that kind of anxiety.
Maybe give us the experience from to the extent that you know in rural British Columbia, where particularly if you're growing up on a farm, you're a 12, 13, 14-year-old up on a tractor, you're learning how to drive at a very young age, right?
Oh yeah. Yep, it's a lot more relaxed. You have more time to learn the ins and outs of your vehicle, when to glance in the mirror, when to flip the indicator, which button to press turn on your headlights. All that stuff you can nail when you're in the safety of it's just a outfield. There's nothing else there. You don't need to worry about another vehicle or a random pedestrian jumping in front of you. It's a lot more low stress to learn.
Indeed.
How to drive.
Teresa, one thing we have not, two words we have not used yet are COVID-19.
Yes.
And I wonder whether part of the lack of interest in getting a driver's license among 16-year-olds today is that for the last 2 years, they haven't needed to go anywhere.
It's true. We've been on restrictions, and it's also made it difficult, right, to get testing done or to get into classes and get license courses. But I think it showed people another way. Again, and some kids have adjusted their lifestyle, right? Because they learned to adapt in that scenario. And so these types of things are going to have an impact, like the pandemic has had an impact on a lot of areas of kids growing up in that time that normally would have been looking at the social factors, getting out, going to car shows, what are they thinking about doing? Everyone's still a little bit more timid. Not everybody, but a lot of people are a lot more timid. And I think it has had a bit of an impact. And if they're hearing from friends or family, again, driving together, driving around, mom and dad maybe, or who they live with, maybe on a hybrid work schedule, so they're around more. All of these things have a ripple effect that can sort of deter someone from going right away.
Yeah. Your CAA catchment area, South Central Ontario, is there any rural in
Yes.
that?
Oh,
There
yes.
is. There is.
Yes.
Okay. So, unlike in the big city, you kind of need a car in rural Ontario to get anywhere.
Yes.
So kids, in your experience, are 16-year-olds in rural Ontario more likely to be going out and getting their licenses at a young age?
I think that sometimes makes up what we see in the urban areas. So it feels like less teenagers are going for their license, but when I look at some of the data, you still have, it's kind of been flat. So it's not been growing in leaps and bounds, but it's kind of been flat. And some assumptions are that it's being made up for in rural areas. I have family in rural Ontario, and yes, like as you said, you're driving tractors or you're driving ATVs for fun. And so it's still a rite of passage because you've already been doing it, and it's pretty easy to get because you have the experience of driving.
I got to ask Sean this. I know you're a Toronto cop. You're not in rural Ontario. You're in Toronto. But I'm betting at some point in your experience, you've pulled over somebody behind the wheel who was 15, 14? Does that happen?
I don't know if I've ever had an underage driver. I've had unlicensed. I've had a lot of G1 drivers without an accompanying supervisor. And that, in fact, that was a big spike during COVID. We saw a lot of that. People who decided they were going to drive regardless of the fact that they couldn't go for their G2 testing, making it legal. And they received charges and suspensions as a result of that.
Huh. Okay, I got to follow up on that. There were people, because they couldn't get their G2s and move up to the next level, they were only G1s. They said, to hell with it, I'm driving as if I have the whole thing anyway?
They made some really bad choices. And the consequences, aside from being the first offense or first time being convicted, they get a 30-day suspension, second time 90, third time they get kicked right out of the program. And they were taking those risks because they decided they weren't willing to wait. And not to mention the fact they're not licensed drivers. If they were in a collision, their claims would have been denied by their insurer.
Interesting. Okay, here we go. Do you blame them for doing that?
Yes.
You do. You understand it?
I can relate to the frustration, but I can't let the offense go. They're putting lives at risk, and they're just not trained.
Gotcha. I want to talk now about the environment. And I know more people are driving battery-powered cars, so there's no smoke coming out of the tailpipe, going up into the air, and ruining the environment more than otherwise. So, Kylie, to you first. This does raise the question of whether, given that there's still a lot of internal combustion cars on our roads, should we actually be encouraging kids to drive, given that more drivers, until we're all EV, means more pollution and not good for the planet? What do you think?
I think it's important that the younger generation gains that independence. Because a lot of people now, at least my age, aren't moving out of their family home as early as they'd like to. So in their early 20s, mid-20s, late 20s, they're still with their parents. So they're sharing a vehicle. They're on the insurance of their parents' vehicle. So I think still learning how to drive, it's important, but you don't necessarily need to buy your own vehicle and add to that environmental impact.
Teresa, is there an argument to be made that actually not having teenagers driving is a good thing because it means less pollution?
I think teens are, and younger generations have been more educated around the environmental and sustainable factors. And I think that's why we're also seeing an uptake in things like electric scooters and electric bikes. And so I think there's some other options out there for them. And I think, though, again, the interest in sustainable transportation, like electric vehicles and other vehicles that are probably on the horizon we haven't even talked about, I think do sort of cover that. I kind of like what Kylie's saying is that, you do have, there's a skill. There's something about learning to drive and a skill. So even when you're on a scooter or a bike, understanding what it means to drive and how to share the road and navigate each other's safety, I think there's still an important factor that you can learn from the skill of driving. I
think there's a life-saving and a health-related skill as well. I mean, if one of your parents, God forbid, faints or something, you got to get them to the hospital, or you got to take them to a doctor or something. You got to know how to drive. Fair to say?
Listen, there's an emergency where you call 911 because we prefer to have an emergency personnel come and bring you that life-saving response right to your door, and then they have more time to get to the hospital. So driving, emergency driving should be left with professionals. But you're absolutely right. Having that skill and being able to be independent and do things like, I don't know, become a police officer. If you want to work for the Toronto Police, you've got to have a full G license. Learner's permit, if you start that process later, you delay your career in law enforcement, for instance.
Interesting.
So absolutely. But in terms of electric vehicles, and I don't know about that argument. That's not an area for me.
No, I got you. Well, okay, let me put this to you then. Again, back in our day, 16 years old, you went out, you got your license, and to the best of my recollection, we had full access to all of the highways and everything in the province from the day we turned 16, once we got that 365, right? Nowadays, we got the graduated licenses in place. Have they, in fact, made a difference in road safety by having kids have to wait however long to get that G2 and have somebody in the front seat with them in the meantime, et cetera?
I think it prevents someone from doing what I did, which was like 30 days later having a full license and being left to their own devices. And there is something to be said for having more time behind the wheel while supervised before being set free. I think it's a good thing. In fact, I'd like to see more testing and more rigorous things. We still have fairly so-so drivers. So, because there's a lot of bad that happens in terms of collisions and whatnot, and it's not by accident. It's because someone made a mistake.
Kylie, I know nobody wants to be discriminated against because of their age, but the reality is a 16-year-old's brain today, well, I'd say two things on this. A 16-year-old's brain today, scientifically speaking, is not as mature as, say, a 25 or a 35-year-old's. We know that to be true. And I'll go further in saying a 16-year-old today is, I'm sorry, simply not as mature as a 16-year-old was 25 or 50 years ago. I think that's also true. In which case, do you think it still makes sense to keep this graduated licensing in place, et cetera?
I think it's definitely important to keep it in place, especially with now how much longer the getting your full license program is. You have a lot more time to practice your skills, mature with those skills, and become a safe driver.
I remember what it was like being 16 X number of years ago, and I can't believe they gave me my driver's license back then. Can you believe some 16-year-olds today are getting a driver's license and are able to go on the road? I mean, you got to know people who are just not ready for that.
Oh yeah, definitely, and especially those who've failed the test, the L test. It's a written test in BC. It's not even a driving test, and have failed it on multiple times, 6, 7, 12 times, and they finally get it, and they're getting out there, and it's awful to watch. Some of that is concerning, but I do think that is a minority, that those are that terrible at driving. So I do think it's still the practice, and especially having a driver who has a full license in the vehicle with these learners. They're not on their own doing this stuff, and they have a longer time to mature and master the art of driving.
I've got to come to the defense of the young drivers, because it's not all young drivers that are bad. I see people at all ages that I really don't think should be driving. And one thing we do as police is we submit reports to have people re-examined for their driving skills if we think that they're a risk on the road. And I've done that on many occasions.
That doesn't usually happen until they're in their 80s and 90s, though, isn't that right?
That is automatically based on age, but I can send a report in for anybody who is driving.
Of any
if I
age.
have a concern, if I don't think that they're meeting the requirements, and they get reviewed.
Okay, just finally, based on your experience, what percentage of people on the roads shouldn't have their licenses?
That's a very dangerous question. I think that's
why I'm asking the guy in the flak jacket.
I don't have a stat. All I know is I deal with the worst drivers. I deal with the drivers who either choose to drive in a manner that is dangerous and should cause them to lose their license, and I'm part of the process for getting their license taken away, because every ticket gets some demerit points in their pocket, so they can have their license either removed or revoked or whatnot. But I see a lot of great drivers too, and unfortunately they have to deal with the people around them who are not driving safely.
Gotcha. We're going to give the officer the last word on this program, which makes sense, I think, from where I'm sitting today. Kylie Bowman, we want to thank you for being there for us. On the line from Nanaimo, British Columbia, Constable Sean Shapiro, Toronto police officer, obviously Mr. Traffic Safety Education on TikTok, and Teresa Di Felice with the Canadian Automobile Association for South Central Ontario. We're grateful to all three of you for coming on to TVO tonight. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
A recent study out of the United Kingdom tracked women's spending habits and accurately identified the symptoms of ovarian cancer based on the customer's purchases. It's a level of tracking that people often balk at, feeling all too surveilled in this technological era. But could this tracking save lives? Let's ask. In London, UK, one of the leads on that study, James Flanagan. He's an associate professor, or as they say in the UK, a reader in epigenetics and data science at Imperial College London. And here in our studio, bioinformatician Emma Bell, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at Princess Margaret Cancer Centre, and Sunil Johal, the David and Ann Wilson Professor in Public Policy and Society at Victoria University at the University of Toronto. And it's great to have, Sunil, you back here. Emma, I think you for the first time here.
Yes.
And James Flanagan, thank you for joining us from across the pond. And I want to start with you. Why don't you just introduce us to the idea of how your study worked to begin with?
How it worked. We started this study, the idea for it started in what's known as a sandpit event, where we come up with crazy ideas to address big challenges. And the big challenge that we had was to use big data to help earlier detection of cancer. we came up with the idea to look at shopping data to try and find out what cancer patients were buying before they go to the GP. We want to shorten that time between when patients identify symptoms and get to the GP, and then from there onto the cancer diagnosis.
So that's what you did. What did you discover?
So what we found, we recruited 153 ovarian cancer patients and 120 control participants, women without ovarian cancer, and we looked at their data going back up to 6 years before the diagnosis. And we found the ovarian cancer patients were buying ovarian pain medication and indigestion medication up to about 8 months before their diagnosis. This was around about 4 to 5 months before they would go to the GP. So they're treating or managing these symptoms for many, many months before they recognize them as serious enough to go to the doctor. The idea of using this data, obviously people can be concerned about tracking and monitoring this data, and it's important to remember, first of all, with the study, that the participants had to provide explicit consent for us to access this data, and any possible monitoring of this data for this purpose would have to be an opt-in system. So people would have to opt in with their data to allow people to monitor it for this purpose.
And one last follow-up before I get our friends here in the studio involved. I mean, obviously, when you're talking ovarian cancer, early diagnosis is absolutely key, because you got a shot at living, obviously, if you can catch this early enough. How much earlier were you able to diagnose, tracking the spending habits of the people involved in your study, than, say, regular medicine could?
So, as I said, the data suggested that the participants, the ovarian cancer patients, were buying these medications about 8 months before their actual diagnosis. This turns out about 4 to 5 months before they visited the GP, and even about 4 months before they recognized their symptoms. In our questionnaire for this study, we asked the participants, when did they first recognize they had serious symptoms of ovarian cancer? And that happened about 4.5 months before their diagnosis. So if we were monitoring this data and found a change in habits or a change in purchases or something going on for over a month where they're increasing their purchase of these medications, you might assume we could get to their diagnosis 3 to 4 months earlier than would otherwise have been. And with ovarian cancer, this is really important because we know the later the diagnosis, the later stage cancer they're diagnosed with, and the poorer their outcomes. So we really want to get them sooner so we can improve their chances of a better outcome.
Okay, let's get some reaction here in the studio. You've worked with him before, yes?
I'm afraid so.
What do you think about the study?
I think it's very promising. There's a clear difference in the purchasing behaviours of people who go on to be diagnosed with ovarian cancer and those who do not, up to 8 months before diagnosis. This is something that's been widely speculated, like the change in behaviour, the uptick in purchasing Pepto-Bismol, ibuprofen. So it's really nice to see it demonstrated. But I caution that this is one of the first few steps on a very long road. So this isn't going to be rolled out tomorrow, 5 years, maybe 10 years. It's got a long way to go before it becomes an effective screening tool.
I gotcha, but let me put it this way. If you could, by doing this, have a 4.5 month extra lead time in diagnosing ovarian cancer, that would be massive, wouldn't it?
That would be enormous. 2/3 of ovarian cancer patients are diagnosed at stage 3, 4, by which it's spread widely throughout the body. If you look at the 5-year survival for those patients, it's about 30%. If you get your diagnosis at stage 1, it's 90%. So
4.5 months earlier diagnosis could mean what percentage more people would live?
Oh, I'm afraid I didn't do that maths.
We don't normally do math on this show, but suffice to say, a lot more people would live.
Yes, well, hopefully. It would get people into the system earlier, which means you've got more treatment options and you've got more you've got more time. So yes, theoretically, this would lead to improvements in survival.
Now, you've been careful to say this is not the silver bullet yet. This is a step on the road. What are your concerns about the shortcomings of this approach?
Well, as James mentioned, this is approximately 150 patients in each group. While ovarian cancer does predominantly affect white people, there are questions about how we would bring this to all Canadians that need to be asked. So the study itself included about a dozen non-white people, is what they were classified as, in both the cases and the controls. So given that although ovarian cancer is more frequent in white people, Black people tend to have lower survival rates. There is certainly a need to make sure that we are including as many people as possible, as many Canadians as possible, as this goes forward. And there is a question about whether you can do that with loyalty card data. So if you look at who has a loyalty card, the majority of those people, they're going to be white, middle-class, cis women who live in urban and suburban areas.
So you have some questions around equity around the whole thing.
Yes, so it's a very self-selecting sample, and while we could definitely help those, well, we could theoretically help those if we get further along these road. What about rural Canadians? What about Black Canadians?
Okay.
What about Indigenous people? Sorry.
I'm going to get, no, not at all. I'm going to get James Flanagan to comment on that in a second, to give him a chance to respond to that. But first, we have you on this program whenever we like to talk data, or data, however you pronounce it, and this seems to be one of those shows. So that's why you're here. What do you think about what you're hearing?
I'm glad I'm not here to talk about cancer research, because I wouldn't have had much to say. But I think on the data point, we're entering a world, and we're in a world now where data is all around us. We're swimming in a data-rich environment. Organizations, whether private sector or public sector, are assessing how they can extract and use that data, and in the case of private sector organizations, monetize that data. That can have potentially very beneficial impacts for us as Canadians and as citizens, but it also has potential significant risks attached to it. So I think we're at a time now where this data gathering has really picked up pace over the past decade or so. And legislative and regulatory frameworks are only now starting to catch up to where the data collection activities have gone. So it's a really interesting time for policymakers, because on the one hand, we can seize this opportunity to deliver better programs, deliver more effective services. But on the other hand, we need to make sure we're doing that in a way that, to Emma's point, is done in an equitable fashion that protects people's privacy, particularly those of marginalized individuals, young people. And those are tricky questions, because most of us in an online environment, when we go on our phone and download an app, we're just clicking through. We want to get the app. We're not looking at those terms and conditions. Do whatever you want with my data.
You don't read all 25,000 words of those terms and conditions?
I used to, but then I realized that's putting me to sleep, and it wasn't working super well. So I think those are some of the challenges we're facing. Like, how are people giving informed consent for the use of their data, and how do we make sure that that's being managed in a fair and an appropriate fashion?
You've been on this program before actually decrying the fact that we don't seem to have adequate data, in particular in the healthcare system, in ways that we need it. They collect a lot of data. What is it? Which is it?
I say data.
Okay.
You say data. You say
okay.
ketchup. I say catsup.
Let's pull the whole thing off.
Okay. Well, whatever we want to call it, you've often been critical of the fact that we don't either collect the right information or enough information. Is this an entry into potentially revolutionizing the way that we use information in the healthcare system to the benefit of the larger population?
I don't know if this particular study is that entry point. I think what we fundamentally need in Canada is we need the basic data infrastructure where people have a digital ID, we have electronic medical records, people can port their data between providers. Because generally speaking, when I'm in the medical system, I don't just see my doctor. I might also be seeing a pharmacist. I might be going to a hospital. I might be seeing specialists. I just switched my family doctor a few weeks ago. I was filling out paper forms, and they're, I think, faxing that information over to my old doctor.
Yep.
They're sending it back to the new doctor, that shouldn't be happening in 2023. I mean, we have examples from other jurisdictions where you should be able to know who's got your medical information. You should be able to freely consent to this provider can look at these parts of my medical records, this provider can't, and it should all be digitized. And it can be done. Other countries are doing it. So let's get to a point where that's possible, and we're not faxing things back and forth, and I'm not writing my chicken scratch writing about who my old doctor's name was, and I might forget her name, and then God knows what happens if they send the wrong records and they're treating me as an 85-year-old gentleman.
Which, if you're lucky, you will be someday.
I hope so.
Yeah, there you go. James Flanagan, let's get you back in here. You've heard some of the concerns that have been expressed here in our studio, particularly around issues of equity and equal access to treatments, security of information, and so on. Go ahead, take a hit at some of those.
So I'll start with the inequality or the ethnicity bias in the data. Obviously, this is very London-based and UK-based. We recruited a lot of patients from Wales, for instance, which is a very white area. And I agree, it's biased, and we should address that by trying to recruit participants from those minority groups. We are actually addressing that in our next study. We're working on a new study looking at new cancer types. And one of the areas that we're recruiting on has a very big Indian population. So, for instance, we're going to be translating some of our documentation into Hindi and various other Indian languages so that they can have the opportunity to participate and not feel excluded because they can't read the questionnaire. So that's one of the ways in which we can address that. We can also address it by recruiting more participants from Hammersmith Hospital, the hospital I'm based at, which has, for the ovarian cancer clinic, I think they have something like 50% non-white patients. So we should have tried to get more from our hospital here. So yes, there are ways we can address that. I think that's an important point. Coming to the sort of data security, I think it's really important that anybody who sees their data being used in this sort of research can feel that the data is held by a trusted source. Universities are typically trusted sources. Government, NHS in the UK, Canadian healthcare system, I'm sure, would be considered a trusted source. We know that people feel less trustful of private companies that, as you say, are using data to monetize it and to try and profit from your data. I think having a health outcome rather than a financial outcome might feel more trustworthy. And I think also about data security, we need to make sure the data is housed within secure environments. For instance, in our study, we were holding this data in what's known as the secure enclaves, which is a very secure computational environment that's not actually attached to the internet, so you can't actually get into it, only through our secure access points in my office right behind me. So it's very secure, and we tell our participants that, and hopefully they will trust us with the data. And I think any use of this data, wherever it is, other researchers needs to be doing it in a similar way. And just coming back to the point about data, there's a lot of data that's being accrued from medical systems, whether your GP appointments, pharmacies, as you mentioned. All of that data is all really important, and it should be collected in a centralized system if we want to be able to do research like what we're doing. But I just point out that our study is really about that point before you go to the GP. We want to decrease the amount of time it takes you before you as an individual decide it's time to go to the doctor, because we see that interval, that patient interval, as we call it, is too long, and we need to get participants, patients, particularly ovarian cancer patients, to the doctor sooner. So I think that's something that we're really hoping will come from this type of research.
Gotcha. I'm tempted to follow up with Emma here, who's also from the UK, on whether it's privacy or privacy, but maybe we'll leave that for another show. But in any event, to what extent do you think, I mean, this is all, groundbreaking and new. How worried are you that by tracking women's shopping patterns, we may get some false positives out of this as well?
Yeah, this is a serious concern when it comes to any screening effort. So the way that we diagnose ovarian cancer currently, we have transvaginal ultrasound, and we have looking at the protein, the blood levels of this protein called cancer antigen 125. Neither of those are perfect. They're not particularly specific. They're not particularly sensitive. Well, like the sensitivity and specificity is the key. So you are going to get some false positives, which means those people are going to end up with the mental health aspects of having to cope with, do I have cancer, and going through that diagnostic pathway. And any tissue biopsy that's taken, that's going to require surgical intervention. Anything surgery-based, you've got a risk of bleeding, you've got a risk of infection, you've got a risk of pain. And you do see false positives coming up. So one of the challenges on this road is to minimize those false positives, because it's an unpleasant experience to go through, even if you have to. So we need to avoid putting people who don't have to through that experience.
Neil, let me ask you a question about some of the ethics around this. For example, when we donate blood, in this country, for the most part, we are not paid. It is a voluntary service. Should the same hold true for data collection in this case?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, I think it does depend on, is this for a corporate use? I mean, if I'm giving my data to Google and they're targeting ads to me, I probably have a higher expectation that I should be paid for that. If it's for a medical study, it's for something more of a public policy purpose, I think there's a stronger argument that this is in society's interest. We shouldn't necessarily be paying you for it.
It's your job as a citizen to do it?
It's kind of incumbent as you as a citizen to do this, and you're going to ultimately benefit from the better information we have about population health or whatever the specific realm may be. So I mean, I think the payment aspect, I don't think that should be kind of the thing that we chase down, and should I get paid for this or should I not? I mean, I think to me it's more, is this being done in an appropriate, responsible, safeguarded way? And if people are profiting off of this in the private sector, then I think there's a much stronger argument that the data providers are being compensated for the provision of that data.
And let me do a follow with James on that. You talk about data donation in the same way that doctors or clinicians talk about tissue donation. So perhaps explain to us how that might work.
Yeah, it's an idea that's been talked about quite a lot over here over the last few years about what's known as digital footprint, or there's a lot of data that's being collected on you, whether that's data from your Fitbit, from your mobile phone, Googling search terms, shopping data, various bits of data. There's a lot of data that's actually being collected about you. And if we can use that for research, use that for health outcomes, and make advances, then it might help if we can link all of that data together. So we've been talking about the idea of asking people to donate their data, much like they donate their blood for the blood service. People do that regularly, and they do it altruistically. They don't get paid for it. And it's the same for data, I think. We need to look at it as an altruistic thing, where people would donate their data, sign up. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, it's always got to be an opt-in. You've got to provide consent for this data to be used, and you can then link all of this data together and try and make new discoveries that will help us with the health outcomes that we're interested in.
Okay, Emma, a very problematic ethical question now coming your way. You ready?
Oh, okay.
Here we go. If we discover down the road some of the concerns that you've already put on the record, that this approach seems to favor white people over black people, is that a reason not to do it? In other words, the fact that we can only potentially help some people because of the problems you outlined, if equity issues prove to be a problem, should it therefore be dropped, or do you go ahead anyway?
It depends. Which I know is a terrible answer.
But it's a nuanced answer, and that's the question.
So when you're making decisions about medical interventions, which drugs to fund within a healthcare system, you have a finite budget. So if you spend money on drug X, which increases the likelihood that a cancer patient is going to live a couple of weeks at a very poor quality of life, and that's one cancer patient, you're spending that money, and you cannot spend that money on anything else that may intervene at an earlier stage.
So it's not a win-win. Somebody wins, somebody loses.
Always. And our healthcare systems are prefaced on the basis that we're going to do the most good for the most people. So if we're talking about a finite healthcare budget and we're not serving all Canadians who are at risk of ovarian cancer, I think there's a stronger argument that we don't push forward and that we instead go work to educate patients on what the symptoms are, which, by the way, gastrointestinal issues, bloating in a postmenopausal person, that usually indicates it's a day that ends in a Y, but it can also be something much more serious. And there's the other half of the other side of that coin where we need to educate GPs better to recognize that collection of symptoms so that when the patient does come in with these complaints, with these changes in their body that they know if they know something is not right, that the GP knows, I need to take this seriously.
James, can I get you on that one as well? If you discover that this approach that you're taking will absolutely disproportionately help white people over people of color, is that reason enough not to go forward?
I think you would probably need to do a lot of research in those different populations to try and really answer that question. I don't think us as individuals can answer that question. I've always said that our study certainly doesn't help anyone who doesn't have a loyalty card study. So a loyalty card. If you study the people with the loyalty cards and discover something that tells you that can help you get to the GP sooner. So imagine that's buying indigestion medication and pain medication over a 3-month period, X number of boxes of this medication. Whether you have that loyalty card or not, we could have information at the pharmacy, for instance, that says, if you're buying this much medication, perhaps you should talk to your GP. And that would then reach those other people that don't have the loyalty card. So that's one way you could reach those people. In terms of other ethnicities or other people that don't have cards, if we were to show that this use of this loyalty card data can have health benefits, it might actually encourage people to get a loyalty card and start using it. So it might actually encourage people to get more involved in using that sort of thing.
Interesting. Okay, Sunil, oftentimes when there's a breakthrough of some kind, there are, almost always unintended consequences people did not see coming down the road. As you think about this, do you see any unintended consequences potentially?
I think James might have just hit on one with his last comment there, where it's the situation where maybe I need to get a loyalty card and start shopping with certain chains so I can get better access to healthcare, because those are the people getting filtered through the system more effectively.
And happy consequence for some retailer.
Might be good if you're the Boots. I don't know if Boots still exists in England, but they did when I was okay. Good. Or Tesco's. I'm naming random British stores now, but something like that could theoretically be an unintended consequence. And we've seen in the past that sometimes tracking population level data or quote unquote big data seems to be ticking along quite well, and then for whatever reason the algorithm kind of goes a bit wonky and it doesn't work. Google flu trends was a good example of that. I don't know if you remember, a number of years ago Google was putting out reports about search terms that people are using for things like I need Tylenol, and that'll track on what the flu rates are in a population. But they had to discontinue that service after a while because the algorithms weren't working very well and it was getting kind of clouded with other information. So I think there's all kinds of potential unintended consequences that have to be monitored, not just by the provider, like the research institution in this case, but who are non-involved parties who have expertise in these areas, who can monitor, make sure that the data is being collected effectively, make sure it's still hewing to its intended policy or program objectives, and it can be terminated, adjusted, or otherwise altered if required.
We're obviously, Emma, talking about ovarian cancer here, but do you think this approach could also work with other types of cancers?
Yes, certainly. So ovarian cancer is one of a selection of sort of more internal cancers that have poorer survival. So cancer survival has increased from about 25% over a 10-year period to about 50% since the 1970s.
That's all cancers?
For all cancers. Ovarian cancer, pancreatic cancer, of course I can't remember the rest off the top of my head right now.
Esophageal?
Oh, yes, I bet you. Sorry.
They're still almost death sentences.
Yes, essentially.
Yeah.
If you get diagnosed with ovarian cancer, eventually you are going to become resistant to the chemotherapies that we currently have available. Thankfully, there's a lot of work being done to provide a wider range of chemotherapies, but still, it's not a great outlook now.
Right.
But if we diagnose at stage 1, when we have a 90% 5-year survival rate, we're giving those patients potentially a better quality of life over a longer period of time. And I think that's certainly worth fighting for.
Amen. James, in our last 30 seconds, tell us about what your next study of interest to our viewers will be.
So we've been funded to continue this work with a new pilot study looking at some of the new cancers, some of the ones you've just mentioned. Esophageal cancer is one that has indigestion, is actually a really serious symptom of that cancer. Cancers like pancreatic cancer, liver cancer, stomach cancer. We'll be looking at about 10 new cancer types to see if monitoring purchases can identify symptoms before these patients go to the GP. So we'll be doing that in the next 12 months or so and hoping to build on it from there.
We should get this group back in 12 to 18 to 24 months and just see how things have gone. That was fascinating. James Flanagan, Associate Professor, or Reader as they call them over there, Imperial College London. We thank you very much for joining us on the line from the UK. Emma Bell, Princess Margaret Cancer Centre, Sunil Johal, Victoria University at the U of T. Great to have you two here in our studio as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is the agenda for Tuesday, March the 7th, 2023. People make big and often financial sacrifices to run for office. Tomorrow, as the race for mayor of Ontario's capital city heats up, we'll find out about the costs of putting your name on the ballot. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.